Shift Gates F13. When Windows 95 came out, Microsoft had spent millions and millions on advertising, had worked on an agreement with WordPerfect to join operation platforms. Windows would work with WordPerfect and vice versa. Of course, the rest is history. Gates stuck it to them and twisted the blade. Remember, his software was encrypted with words, not so perfect words. Worse than me, that shift, or was it shift F fuck and control alt delete. WordPerfect Gates moused their numbers, all 12 of them. I have heard many stories about Bruce leaving and being ostracized by the Utah County and BYU. Remember, most Mormons think it is a sin, a big sin, to be gay. Again, I do not know Bruce Bashan or Alan Chass, but I do know of them, and I know they are brilliant, absolutely brilliant men. Their invention is epic. Their story is American in all its glory, like Philo before them. Again, Philo Farnsworth's mother maiden name is Bashan. I do not know if they're related, but my guess is yes, somewhere in the Mormon lines. But Mormons from Utah and Idaho, remember, Ashen and Bashan were both music majors in the marching band. I had a big bullwinkle, as they would call them, idiots with a platform. Bullwinkles, coaches, players, etc., who would scream, "Get in the band," every time anyone would show any kind of weakness or flaw in athletics or strength. I was a good athlete when I was a young man, from a great athletic family, but I was an artist first, and when he said, the coach used to yell, "Get in the band," if he was really pissed off at you. Later in life, I worked with him in my construction company, Blanch Plastering. I'm a plaster. I would help him on jobs and later worked with me and for me for a time. I told him one day when he started to get in the band with the younger guys on the crew, I said, "Hey, Bullwinkle, you do know Walter Payton never played high school football and was in the band. You do know Alan Ashen and Bruce Banyan are," he said, "Oh yeah, aren't they the BYU guys who started Word?" "Yeah, that's right, in the band. All three of them were in the band." "No," he said. He never said get in the band ever again. I have worked on a matrix trying to put a number on each person in Utah and per person in the state of Washington in regard to the WordPerfect Microsoft flip, switch theft, or the control comfort zone, whatever you want to call it, costs in dollars. Remember, Gates did the same thing to Netscape. Read what Mark Anderson or James Clark have to say about Gates. Talk about two guys who get no credit. Another two brilliant minds, Mark Anderson, James Clark, the brilliance behind Netscape. I need to caveat this as Mark Anderson was one of the early investors in Facebook, so he got his money back. As I put my numbers together, I have used the equity price of Microsoft and equity price of Novell, who bought WordPerfect. Remember, Novell, after the acquisition of WordPerfect and well over $1 billion in cash, it was Eric Schmidt, yes, the same Eric Schmidt, CEO of Google, who tried to turn Novell around and did move the equity from $7 to $41 in February of 2000. I made a lot of money trading the derivatives on Novell, and I loved that turnaround until the bottom fell out in early 2000, like all the tech wrecks. Schmidt had a buyback program that used up all of the cash. He robbed that company of every penny. Talk about right place, right time, and those idiots at Google hired that. He's terrible. Billion, then left. Novell is in the Boston now. It trades at $5 a share. Update, Novell was sold yesterday, 11/20/10, for $2.3 billion in cash. In the 90s, Novell market cap was well over $15 billion. My numbers are this, my matrix, the equity price of Microsoft and Novell, 10%. The paychecks and the lack thereof of paychecks in Utah and the state of Washington, 40%. The taxes paid to the state of Washington and Microsoft and the tax revenue that left Utah, 40%. The philanthropy donations by Microsoft executives and corporations, WordPerfect owners, donations to the said states, 10%. It must be said the philanthropy component is a very rough estimate, and that the donations to the state of Utah and Washington, state of Washington, have been much appreciated by both states. Every man, woman, and child in Utah has missed out on approximately $134,000 per person. Every man, woman, and child in the state of Washington has gained approximately $87,000 per person. Remember, this book is not an anal statistical study, but a book on post-ignorance, as a look in the evaluation of our country and the world in the broadest of a context. Again, like I said at the beginning of this book, I will and have taken a step back like Malay and view of my said subject matter from the broader perspective, in the big picture, and the most direct in substance. These numbers are very rough estimates by me using my small matrix. I have built around this said numbers and weighted. I believe my numbers to be extremely conservative. I do not use a multiple effect. And we all know there is a huge multiple ripple, not Mets, ripples. I have come to believe that much of Utah in this country has a psychological defect called degenerate behavior. They cannot stand success and will find a way to punish themselves by their own actions. When I grew up in Weber County's Mormon business mind, being gay would not even been something anyone would even known or talked about. It was kind of like the difference between John Kennedy's sex life and Bill Clinton's sex life. Bastion's openly gay was an open wound in Utahns at BYU community, and they would not have it. I do not know if it would have been different if he had kept it a secret, but my guess living in Utah my whole life is yes, very different. I could, and one day we'll write a book on the entire said thesis and said subject matter. I know this story and the facts to a T. Gates did scam WordPerfect and Windows 95 big time. I know that there are many married men with children that are gay in Utah. That is a fact of life. They go about their business like nothing is wrong when inside they know everything is wrong. But the Utahn puts a very big weight on your standing in the community. It means everything to many Utahns, Mormon and non-Mormons. I admire Bastion for living the truth. I am a truth believer in the truth which this country seems to lack or paint red. My point is Freudian again. I believe that the openly gay approach and coming out Bastion had everything to do with WordPerfect losing its 90% market plus. Remember, the only other player in that field was Corel, not Microsoft. Novell is still trying to sue Microsoft to this day. And there's another caveat right here behind me. That case finally went to trial, and he got to one juror. It went 11-1, and one juror held out, and they got a hung trial. So he got to somebody. Of course, our 1-point-something billion was the lawsuit. The lawsuit going on for 15 years. It's been hundreds of billions he stole from here. Of course, the courts are bought and paid for by our politicians. Another upcoming book of mine. Private prisons, which have huge ties to Ogden. 5 elephants sitting on a fence. What do you get? No more fences. In the late 90s, when the Justice Department went after Microsoft, they ruled they were in violation of antitrust laws and they needed to be broken up. I believe that would have been much better off as far as the equity price goes by doing exactly what the Justice Department wanted them to do. Their equity price has been locked up or so big in market cap, number of shares times price of share, they cannot budge. And there is not enough liquidity to budge them. It kills me when I hear Gates a few years ago make a statement that he wishes he did not have all that money. It is actually sickening. He teed up and crushed so much technology, and it's truly undeniable he got away with it, all of it. Again, Neil ignorant Papa Pin, that there's some who looks up to him. Wow, think of this. If minds like Ashton and Bastion and Mark Anderson and James Clark and dozens of others, their minds of companies were the leaders, how much technology would he evolve from those great minds? Like Farnsworth, who had dozens and dozens of brilliant inventions and no platform to grow them. RCA robbed him. As a people are the ones left behind, the synergies of invention and the corporate platform are what are so unique and magnificent about the United States, and a man's sexual preference matters? Or a man standing along the law, above the law? We have always had antitrust laws for a reason, to benefit all men, not a few men. What Gates did was wrong and illegal. But again, American popular opinion has turned politics and religion. And to the Mormon Karl Rove, yes, I can spell his name with a small c, Karl Rove with a small c, as his mother intended, and a very small sex and narrative. And yes, everyone thinks he is a U-banger and did live here and is a Mormon, but Colorado gets the credit for this one, not Utah. He helped construct what has already been in the making for 15 years. Politics is not politics anymore, it is religion. And religion we believe, trumping any deductive thinking or logical knowledge. We believe, and then we tell us Gates does not have to follow the rules. We believe when W. Bush leads us into a $30 trillion pissing match with a man that threatened to fight his father. We believe when corporate America sends all our jobs to slaves in China. We believe when they tell us with a wink and a nod it's all right to break every law in the country that men have ever fought and died for in the name of a quick buck. We believe in paying illegal hungry human from the South cash to build our house and mow our lawns. We love to exploit others, even though our religious theologies we attend tells us it is a sin. Politics has trumped our religious core. It is all about money and power. It rules all. The fact of the technology boom was on, and it was crushed by the theft in the election of theft. It was all about stop the technology or ideas, stop it by the biggest bullies win, and we let them. God forbid we stand up to them. I think it is very important to explore the bully factor, as I like to call it, in the context of Gates, George W., environmental movement, stop, I mean the fake. No, take your money, contributions, move to your pockets. The corporate bullying and the economic bullying. Somewhere along the line, the so-called left went soft. And it's a sad commentary when the left mouthpieces become two very brilliant minds on Comedy Central, Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert. They have somewhere become the point for the left. I find that totally ridiculous. I love them both. Their writers are very brilliant, but I totally disagree with their thesis. That is, the so-called left must be passive. I will review the labor movement of 1933 to the 1970s, Teddy Roosevelt environmental movement 1900 to 1930, Bonnie and Clyde romance of the 1930s. Next time you are headed to Las Vegas on I-15, keep going a couple miles west and go see the car. It's amazing to see how many times they needed to kill them. Clyde Shirt is also there. Do you think the labor movement that created the strongest middle class in the history of the world did it passively? Do you think Teddy Roosevelt taking land and making it public land did it passively? Do you think that there was some sort of passive reading of a newspaper that created the romance of the 80% support of popular opinion in regard to Dillinger and Bonnie and Clyde? Newspapers, those black and white and red all over things. You know, those things you wash your mirror with, Monica. It was done with blood, lots of blood. It was aggressive as it gets in all three said cultural events. That shaped our country over the past century, was taken on the boys with force. It is all as time itself. There is only one way to deal with the boys: slug them in their mouth, right in their big fat, hairsprayed, hamburger-eating, lazy mouth, their fucking mouth. The so-called left has no clue when it comes to this concept. I find it pathetic. Somewhere we offered at the word fuck or strong loud argument when the Tea Party of the corporate Kool-Aid AstroTurf faithful CNBC go loud and ignorant. The so-called left hides in the corner. I have a line in mind I like to use: passive, nice conversations. Passive conversations are dangerous. Passionate, intelligent arguments get results. It was the theft of the 2000 election by the far right that showed how weak the left is in this country. Very weak. Bill Gates is in total disagree of the law, who freely admits to breaking the antitrust laws of this country and dozens of laws in regard to the theft of Netscape and WorkPerfect and others. But we pray to him, one of those money. It's Donald Trump all. No offense to Donald. Those fucking losers Mets. And I know you are a Yank. You have to be. That's the big time Big Apple rules. British Petroleum and the oil industry blatantly violation of law, not just in the Gulf disaster, but in the Exxon Valdez, dozens and dozens of deaths. Destruction and violation of law. Past generations of the greatest generation who have rioted and heads would have rolled. Not now. The popular opinion is just read about it. Maybe bitch to your partner. God forbid we do anything about it. Hell no. Do not go punch the bully in the mouth and sit his fat, hair-sprayed, hamburger-y ass and exploiting ass down in the corner where he belongs. I'm afraid. Wow, how pathetic has it become? Pathetic, very pathetic. I was an oil analyst meeting in the late 90s. I was working for a hedge fund and was a young semiconductor analyst. My very close friend who worked in the same fund asked me if I wanted to go to the British Petroleum Analyst meeting in Manhattan with him and our boss Anthony. I went, and in the Q&A I raised my credential. They called on me. My boss and Ryan already had their heads in their hands. They knew me too well. I stood and said, Bill or Fred or Bob or whatever the fuck your name is, where do you get off coming to the United States and polluting and raping our laws and land and waters? They expected us to call you Lord. Remember, Lord. Remember the pedophile old CO, the British called himself Lord, and later he was having sex with a young male intern. That's how he left. I said, as far as I'm concerned, every single American analyst in this room, and they are pussies, they are pieces of shit. And there have to be a lot, 50. And that addressed him as Lord Brown. Wow. Are a bunch of fucking pussy morons, and they should be ashamed of themselves. Then I said one last thing. This is for the land, for the animals, and the people you have destroyed here. Go fuck yourself, you fucking creep. I was, of course, escorted out of the meeting. I probably was fired, but I could not help myself. The next morning I walked into the office early, very early, 4 a.m. I wanted to get some reading done of a couple semiconductor earner reports and finish my evaluation. My boss was already there. He was addicted. He was a billionaire with a B, a big B. His own wife, a big B of her own, hated him. Or he hated her. Her 2 sons, 3 grandsons who worked for him and hated them. He was addicted to money and the Wall Street game. His wife would hobnob all over the world. They had houses all over the world, some I do not think he had ever even seen. His sons and grandsons were arrogant, do-nothing, Ivy League morons with gold-digging whores for wives. They hated me, but He loved me because I was a Western and I was good at what I did, making him money. I sent him a plaque for Christmas one year to hang on his son's wall that I have made that said, "I know a lot of very rich people who live very poor lives." He loved it and would freely admit to me he was one of them. He hung it on his wall for the entire time I worked for him. He called me in. I said, "I am afraid I am fired, right?" He said, "No, I heard all about it from dozens of people. I loved it. It was the best rant I have heard in years. Meet me at the bar after work." We hung in what I tell people is the greatest strip bar in the United States. It was VIP only in Lower Manhattan. I walked out to the trading floor and received a standing ovation. Of course, no one would admit it to this day. They in public would say things like, "That Blanch is nothing but a crude, hard-back-ass Western hick." My boss would say, "Yeah, you're right, but he's one educated, screwy hick." I out-traded everyone in that firm 3 years in a row. Derivatives. I was our firm's lead merge and spin arbitrage derivatives specialist. That night I went to the club and swiped my card and walked in. There was my boss, Ryan. My boss and Ryan and the boss's grandson sitting there. I went over to my boss. He put his arm around me and said, "Good work," and handed me a check for $5,000. I said, "What is that for?" "It's because you are doing a good job, and that's what it's for." You could see his grandson did not like it. He hated me anyway. He was a punk, 10 years younger than me. And even though I out-traded him by miles after years, he made 5 times what I made. And I made a lot. Blood is thicker than water on Wall Street. Besides, his boss's wife, his mother owned half the firm, and she loved those baby boys and hated her husband. About an hour later, here came in the punk's gold-digging, very hot wife. She was your quintessential Wall Street gold digger, who are very much like athlete groupies or musician groupies, but smarter, much smarter. These girls are slick as it gets. She knew I was onto her. She would flirt with me every chance she got. I had money, I was successful in very condition. I was a Western. I received attention like no, you would not believe in those days. She sat right next to me in front of him. I got up and left the bar. For days this punk would challenge me. He would tell me about his 3rd-degree black belt he received at Princeton. I would say, "That's nice," and blow it off. He had come so close to me knocking him out hundreds of times, which I eventually did. His wife, everyone in the firm, knew it was only a matter of time. Chapter 6, Dr. Clyde Cooley, My House Falls to Orwellians.